Diving back into the action now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast. If you are just joining the show, we just finished talking about Saquon Barkley and the Eagles defense, having a discussion about them, who is most valuable to the Eagles, as well as giving our reactions to Matthew Stafford coming back and playing in 2025. But now looking ahead to this segment, as you guys can see on the screen, we're going to be ranking the top 5 performers in the playoffs so far. Now that we're one game away, we're just one more Sunday away from the NFL season being over. I thought I'd look at these playoffs and think, like who has elevated their performance in this year's playoffs, right? There's been a lot of stories, there's been a lot of upsets, a lot of surprising results, and just a lot of big plays that have been made that I thought I would highlight some of those players that maybe some people aren't talking about as much, but also some pretty household names, if you will, right? For some of the performances in this year's playoffs. So starting with number 5, the 5th player that I think, or actually scratch that. Before I get to the 5, I got to give some honorable mentions. Just a couple, just 3 of them. Travis Kelce was one of them. He had a very impressive game against the Texans, but I would have liked to have seen him a little bit more involved against the Bills. Terry McLaurin, he scored, I believe, in every game that he played, and he really showed up as their true number 1. So I had to give him a shout out as well. And Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, he only played one game, but the way that he was trending and the way that he played in that game, if they would have stayed alive and continued to play, I think he was in for a very prosperous playoff run. But unfortunately, they lost. So now we can get to number 5. And at number 5, I have Xavier Worthy, the rookie wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is the 5th most impactful player, the 5th best player in this year's playoffs, because he looks like their go-to receiver to me, right? When they need to move the change, they need a big play down the field, or just in terms of just in being impactful as soon as you're on the field, I don't think any other Chiefs receiver does that other than the Hall of Famer and Travis Kelce, obviously, right? But no actual wide receiver that they have. You put on the field and you think, and you have to know like where he is at all times, right? Hopkins has the legacy and has the reputation, right? Obviously, but currently, I think Xavier Worthy makes more of an impact just based on natural God-given ability that he's the fastest ever recorded 40-yard dash in the NFL. So there's that aspect of it, right? Speed kills. Everybody needs to know where he is at all times. But I think as the season has gone on and he's grown a little bit through it, and he's also, been thrown right into like the thick of things, right? With the injury to Rashee Rice, Pacheco going down, Hollywood Brown basically not playing all year, he's had to be out there a lot, and he's learned a lot, and I think he's taken it in a very good stride, again, only as a rookie receiver. And he leads the Chiefs so far in receptions in the playoffs, in targets in the playoffs, and has 130 yards so far, which is only second to Travis Kelce at 136. And to me, he just has the most dynamic look to him, just how, and he just makes like impactful plays where he had that catch against the Bills this past weekend where I think it was Corey Bishop, I think it's the Bills player's name. It's something Bishop. Him and Xavier Worthy went up, had a contested ball up there, and Worthy came down with it, and that eventually led to some points for the Kansas City Chiefs. So he's made impactful plays. He scored some touchdowns, and it's not like he has like 4 receptions and like 5 targets, right? He clearly is someone that the Chiefs want to get the ball to and want to have impact the game because they know he's capable of it. So I had to include him on this list just because he's also exceeded some expectations as well. So I've been very pleased with what I've seen from Xavier Worthy. And that brings me to number 4, which is the most underrated guy on this list. I would say Dallas Goedert has been the 4th most impactful player in this year's playoffs because for helping your quarterback as much as anybody, I think Dallas Goedert has been a huge, not sigh of relief, but just a security target for Jalen Hurts, right? I think he's been huge for Jalen Hurts in that regard, knowing that you have a tight end that you could just, release out into the flat or have just a choice, an option route lined up for him, or that can beat you up the seam, that can beat one-on-one coverage, that can just be a problem out there for opposing defenses, is a great thing to have for quarterbacks, especially one where, Jalen might not be asked to throw the ball a lot, so those throws are very valuable. You have a very reliable target in Dallas Goedert, and he's been exactly that, because he leads the Eagles in yards at 188, in receptions with 15, and he, much like A.J. Brown and I believe Jahan Dotson, are the only receivers that have caught a touchdown, right? No other Eagles player, receiving-wise, has more than one touchdown, so he leads in all those categories, right, so far through the playoffs. And I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith draw a lot of attention that allows Goddard to take advantage of it. And he's always available for Jalen Hurts. He's always there for him. And I think having Goddard there has allowed Jalen to get more in rhythm a lot of the times. He's made some big-time throws to him, and Dallas Goedert, has just made the reliable play each and every time. And one thing that always stuck with me, kind of as a side note, is following the Steelers and Mike McCarthy, God no. Mike Tomlin, following Mike Tomlin, he always has, his Tomlinisms, right? And one of them was, players that can do routine things routinely. And I think that's the perfect embodiment for Dallas Goedert. I think he's exactly that for the Philadelphia Eagles, helping them get to another Super Bowl. And that is only number 4, though, right? We couldn't put Dallas Goedert too far ahead on this list. At number 3, I gave it to James Cook for a couple reasons, right? I feel like the Bills changed their identity a lot this year, and it was very predicated on the run, right? The run, they were a run-first team. A lot of it came off of the success of the running ability of Josh, James Cook certainly, but also spotting him with Ty Johnson and guys like Ray Davis. But James Cook, he led the Bills in all categories, but also only second to Saquon Barkley in the postseason in terms of running back stats. But in terms of rushing on the Bills, he's been the leader in every single statistic, and I thought the Bills clearly looked as their best version in that second half when, he ends up scoring and they have that long drive where they just ran the ball right at the Chiefs defense. I thought that's when the Bills hit their peak, unfortunately, in this game. And, after that, it quite wasn't to that same level. And it was a shame because I think also that's another reason why I had James Cook on here, because I believe that if James Cook would have been more involved, maybe during that drive, obviously, where Josh doesn't convert, that Hail Mary kind of throw down the field, I feel like if they would have just got James Cook a little bit more involved and they got him the ball a bit more during that, it could have not changed the outcome of the game, because I don't know that, but I feel like they would have put themselves in a little bit more of a manageable situation when it comes to, facing a fourth down, right? Maybe you wouldn't have been in 4th and 10 or whatever it was. So I think that was something that goes unspoken a lot of the times, and, his level of play never really dropped. He had 2 touchdowns against the Chiefs and 120 yards against the Broncos, still very impactful against the Ravens. So I had to give it to James Cook at the number 3 spot. But then number 1 and number 2 were pretty obvious, I would say. At number 2, I gave it to Saquon for obvious reasons, right? I don't really have to list all of them out, but just to talk about a couple, right? He's had 118 yards each game. He has 5 touchdowns, and instead of throwing the ball down the field as your big, game-changing, momentum-swinging kind of plays for the Eagles, it always feels like it's a Saquon run that's like 50 yards, 70 yards, 60 yards, or something like that. That's the kind of impact that Saquon has on this team. So I had to put Saquon at number 2, obviously, for that reason, and the impact that he had in the regular season as well, right? It doesn't just go unnoticed. But at number 1, the best player in this year's playoffs, I thought, was Jaden Daniels. And the difference between him and Saquon, I believe, is that, again, going back to the last segment a little bit, not that Saquon's not important and that I want to diminish his impact, but I feel like, again, with other running backs, maybe with like DeAndre Swift or any other running back maybe that they picked up in free agency that was available, like Aaron Jones or something like that, right? If Aaron Jones was on this team, I feel like they wouldn't be so far off of where they are right now. I feel like with Jaden, like his level of play and his impact on this Commanders team is second to none, right? He elevated the performance of everybody. Without him, they're nowhere near where they are now, and they're nowhere near the NFC Conference Championship game. That's insane. And he's exceeded everyone's expectations. He's been definitely what a lot of people expected, but a lot more, right? Getting to where they are right now. And of course, people say it's a team game and that a lot of people contributed to it, but not as much as Jaden, right? Everything was on his shoulders when it comes to the run game, the pass game, making the right decisions, in play calling and whatnot. I think that falls heavily on Jaden. And as a rookie player, to have all those responsibilities and take them this far, I think to me that's insurmountable. So I have to have him as my number one player in this year's playoffs. What he's been able to do has been historic. So I put him at number one, and the rest of the list I thought was pretty self-explanatory. So we're going to leave my thoughts and that ranking right there before we enter another break, the last one of the show, and not the last one of the show, the second to last one, and we look ahead to the kickoff format. That'll be coming up in the next segment, looking back on a year where the NFL implemented this new dynamic kickoff rule, and now that the regular season has been over for some time now, what are the statistics and the feedback? What has the feedback been with this new kickoff format? Has it been a success, or do people not like it? We're going to talk about it when we return after this break.